The strange case of Nicholas Downey. In late February of 2023, 37-year-old Nicholas Downey set out on what should have been a straightforward trip. Renting a Tesla in Florida, he drove to Mississippi to visit his wife. The journey there was uneventful, and he arrived safely. However, the visit was brief. Nick needed to return to Florida to drop off the rental car. On the way back, he spoke to his wife one final time by phone. After that conversation, he seemed to vanish from existence. The following morning, his wife tried calling him again. This time, there was no answer. Her attempts to reach him grew more urgent, and finally, someone did pick up. But it was not Nick. On the other end was a deputy from the Liberty County Sheriff's Office. The officer explained that Nick's rental car had been located on a remote piece of property in Liberty County, Florida. Strangely, Nick was nowhere in sight. Even more unsettling, there were no footprints, no tire tracks beyond those of the vehicle, and no evidence to indicate where he might have gone. A K9 tracking team was deployed to comb the area, but their search came up empty. The dogs detected no scent trail to follow, as though Nick had simply ceased to be present in that space. There were no personal belongings scattered around, no signs of distress, and no physical evidence that could explain his absence. Adding to the mystery, the car was far off any logical route he would have taken to return the rental. These baffling circumstances left both his family and investigators with more questions than answers. Law enforcement officials admitted in moments of candid conversation that they were running out of logical explanations. In an almost reluctant manner, a few even suggested that the scenario had crossed into territory that sounded closer to science fiction than reality. The idea that something entirely out of the ordinary, perhaps even beyond this world, could be responsible was mentioned, not from conviction, but from the sheer inability to make sense of the facts. Over the months that followed, searches were conducted, leads were pursued, and theories were debated. Yet none brought any clarity to the case. There were no confirmed sightings, no transactions, and no communications from Nick. It was as if he had stepped into a place no one could follow. Now, more than 2 years later, the disappearance of Nicholas Downey remains one of the most haunting mysteries in recent memory. His loved ones still hold on to hope, clinging to the belief that answers will someday surface. But for now, all that remains is the image of an abandoned car in a remote Florida location, and the unshakable sense that whatever happened to Nick defies conventional explanation. The silence surrounding his fate has become as much a part of the mystery as the day he vanished. The mystery of Melody O'Gara. In late October of 2004, 28-year-old Melody O'Gara, a British tourist from Bolton, England, vanished in Sydney under mysterious circumstances. Melody had arrived in Australia in February of that year on a working visa, spending her time working in cafes and living in the lively inner-city suburb of King's Cross. Friends described her as a petite woman with shoulder-length brown hair and brown eyes, who was social, friendly, and enjoyed the coastal lifestyle. On Sunday, the 24th of October, Melody was last seen at a friend's home in Bondi. She had told her friend she planned to sleep on the sofa in the living room, but by the morning, she was gone. Her absence initially raised no alarm, but as the hours passed and she failed to return to her King's Cross apartment, her flatmates began to worry. Their concern deepened when Melody did not board her pre-booked flight to Melbourne on Monday, nor her scheduled flight to Singapore 2 days later. On Thursday, the 28th of October, a security guard discovered her handbag at Marks Park, a clifftop area on the coastal walk between Tamarama and South Bondi. The bag, which contained personal belongings, was found under an overhanging rock just 2 meters from the cliff's edge. The discovery prompted an immediate search of the surrounding area. Water police were contacted, and while a coastal search was planned, it was delayed due to poor weather conditions. Despite these efforts, no further trace of Melody was found. Her father, Hugh O'Gara, flew to Sydney from London as soon as he learned of her disappearance, hoping to assist in the search and gather answers. Friends and family back in the United Kingdom were left in shock, struggling to comprehend how someone could simply vanish in a busy coastal city without leaving any trace. Adding to the mystery, there was a reported sighting of a woman matching Melody's description by an elderly man near a cliff in Sydney's eastern suburbs around the time she went missing. While intriguing, this lead did not result in any confirmed information. Police stated there was no clear evidence of foul play, but the location of her bag so close to the cliffs left many uneasy. Investigators checked Melody's bank accounts and credit card activity, but there were no signs they had been used since her disappearance. Friends contacted police after appeals for information were made, but none of the tips brought investigators closer to finding her. Melody's last known movements remain shrouded in uncertainty. She had attended a party the night before her disappearance and seemed to be in good spirits. Why she left her friend's home that morning, where she went, and how her belongings ended up near the cliffs are questions that remain unanswered. 2 decades later, the disappearance of Melody O'Gara is still an unsolved case that lingers in the minds of those who knew her. Her story stands as one of Sydney's most enduring mysteries, a young traveller who came to Australia seeking adventure and new experiences, only to vanish without explanation. The bizarre case of Clovino da Silva. In early August 2019, an extraordinary and bizarre scene unfolded inside a maximum security prison in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. 42-year-old Clovino da Silva, an inmate with a long criminal history, attempted an audacious escape that drew global attention. His plan was unlike anything prison staff had seen before. He tried to disguise himself as his own teenage daughter in order to walk out of the facility unnoticed. Photographs released by authorities showed the remarkable transformation. In one frame, da Silva stood bare-chested, holding a silicone mask and wig. In another, he had donned the mask, a pink t-shirt adorned with a cartoon image, tight blue jeans, and sandals. The disguise was completed with a grey jacket and a long, straight-haired wig, giving him the appearance of a young woman. His hope was that this elaborate outfit would allow him to simply blend in among visiting family members and exit through the main gate. However, the escape attempt failed. Guards quickly noticed his nervous demeanour and unnatural movements, and he was detained before he could leave the premises. The incident made headlines across Brazil and around the world, both for its boldness and for the surreal images showing the step-by-step process of the disguise being removed. Just days after this failed attempt, the story took an even darker turn. Clovino da Silva was found unresponsive in his cell. Local media, citing Brazilian authorities, confirmed his passing, but released little concrete information about the circumstances. The sudden development sparked speculation, with some questioning whether his connections within the criminal underworld or the humiliation from the failed escape could have played a role. Authorities have provided no definitive explanation, leaving room for continued debate and suspicion. The case of Clovino da Silva remains a striking example of both human ingenuity and the extreme measures some will take in pursuit of freedom. His escape attempt, captured in a sequence of almost cinematic images, will be remembered not just for its unusual method, but also for the unanswered questions that followed in its wake. The disappearance of Julia Ann Bean. Julia Ann Bean, a 36-year-old woman, went missing on May 31, 2017, in Sumter, South Carolina. Her disappearance occurred shortly after she was spotted in the company of an unidentified male individual. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance raise numerous questions. Julia Ann Bean, a woman born on May 2, 1981, has the important role of being a mother to 3 children. Bean's friends and relatives have revealed that during the period when she went missing, she was grappling with personal challenges. Furthermore, her daughter recollected instances where various men provided her with money. In Sumter, South Carolina, on the fateful day of May 31, 2017, Julia Ann Bean, a woman in her prime, was last sighted by her concerned daughter in the vicinity of Red Bay Road. This particular day held promises of mother-daughter bonding, as they had eagerly planned to indulge in a pampering session at the local nail salon. However, as fate would have it, Bean arrived at the establishment accompanied by an unfamiliar gentleman, who was in charge of maneuvering a somber-looking dark truck. The gentleman informed his daughter about his ownership of multiple lake houses and large boats, extending an invitation for her to host a boat party whenever she desired. Furthermore, he expressed his willingness to accompany her to a concert, and even expressed his desire to marry Bean. Bean's daughter, whose high school graduation was just a day away, generously handed over a pair of tickets to a man, enabling him to be a part of the momentous ceremony alongside Bean. This act of kindness exemplifies the strong bond between Bean's daughter and the man. Bean failed to make an appearance at her daughter's momentous graduation ceremony and has remained elusive ever since, with no communication being established. On the 18th of November, in the year 2017, the family of this individual took the necessary step of submitting a report to the Sumter Police Department, expressing their concern over her sudden disappearance. Bean inadvertently forgot to bring along her wallet, cell phone, and keys when she left her house. In terms of financial resources, she possessed a substantial amount of $5,000 deposited in her bank account, in addition to an undisclosed amount of cash kept inside her purse. At the time when Bean went missing, she did not possess a mobile phone. There are suspicions of foul play surrounding the mysterious disappearance of Julia Ann Bean. The exact details of her disappearance are still unclear, and as a result, her case is currently labelled as a missing persons case. This unsettling situation remains unresolved, leaving unanswered questions and lingering concerns. The mysterious disappearance of Jackson Brent Garcia. Jackson Brent Garcia, an 18-year-old individual, went missing on December 26, 2020, in Sumter County, South Carolina. The last known sighting of him was on Ithaca Drive, where he left his cousin's residence that evening. When Garcia vanished, he was residing in Sumter, South Carolina, alongside his grandmother. It is worth noting that he is commonly known by the nickname Brent. This mysterious disappearance has raised many questions and demands a thorough investigation. According to his family, who depict him as a compassionate and family-centric individual, it is highly atypical for Brent to disappear without reaching out to anyone. On the auspicious day of December 25, 2020, Jackson Brent Garcia commenced the morning in the delightful company of his cherished family, indulging in the joyful merriment of Christmas festivities and eagerly unwrapping the thoughtfully exchanged presents. Between the hours of 4 and 5:30 in the afternoon, Garcia engaged in separate telephone conversations with both his brother and grandmother. During these interactions, he communicated to them that he was currently occupied with playing games at his cousin's residence and assured them of his imminent return to his own home. Following his failure to return home, Garcia's grandmother made several attempts to reach out to him, endeavoring to establish contact. Despite her persistent efforts, Garcia chose not to answer the phone, leaving his grandmother in a state of worry and concern. In the evening of December 26, 2020, Garcia was sighted for the last time by his cousin at his residence situated on Ithaca Drive in Sumter, South Carolina. This particular sighting occurred while both of them were spending time outdoors with their family pet. At approximately 7 in the evening, his cousin responsibly brought the dog indoors and headed back into the house. However, upon entering, they realized that Garcia, the dog, was mysteriously missing from sight. This sudden disappearance left everyone perplexed and concerned about his whereabouts. According to the available information, Garcia, unfortunately, did not return home, and there have been no updates or communication from him since then. It is worth noting that although his cousin did not witness his departure, it is widely believed that Brent left his location on foot. On the 28th of December in the year 2020, the mother of the individual took the initiative of filing a report concerning their disappearance. During the investigation into the disappearance of Jackson Brent Garcia, authorities have received numerous reports detailing sightings of him around the time he went missing. Authorities in the vicinity where Garcia was last spotted carried out extensive searches, employing aerial surveillance, foot patrols, and the utilization of highly trained K-9 units. According to statements from his family, Garcia had a documented history of anxiety. It is worth noting that his struggles with these conditions were well known among his loved ones. Unfortunately, prior to his disappearance, Garcia neglected to bring along his prescribed medications, which were crucial for stabilizing his health. Following an extensive investigation, law enforcement authorities were unable to uncover any substantive evidence, methods, or motives associated with the mysterious disappearance of Jackson Garcia. Brent's Army, Crime Stoppers, and the Sumter Police Department have come together to offer a substantial reward of $10,000 to anyone who can provide crucial information that will assist in locating Brent. The circumstances of Jackson Brent Garcia's disappearance remain unclear, and his case is currently classified as missing. His case remains unsolved. The mystery of Tabitha Goines. Tabitha Goines, a 39-year-old woman, went missing in Fayetteville, North Carolina on November 24, 2019. Tabitha, who is a mother of 4, vanished without a trace, causing great concern for her family. In the early hours of November 24, 2019, specifically around 12:30, Tabitha departed from the place of residence where she had been staying. While strolling through the dense woods, Tabitha found herself trailing behind her boyfriend. As he abruptly spun around to face her, a wave of confusion washed over him as he realized she had vanished from the area. During that moment, Tabitha was clad in a sleek black zip-up jacket paired with trendy leopard print leggings and completed her outfit with a fashionable combination of grey and orange Nike Air Max sneakers. Dennis Lessersane, the boyfriend of Tabitha, had the unfortunate distinction of being the final individual to have sight of her prior to her mysterious disappearance. According to his account, he claims that he was apprehended by the alcohol law enforcement on the same night she disappeared. He further explains that during the raid, they sought refuge in the nearby woods, where unfortunately, he lost sight of her amidst the chaos. Subsequently, he decided to seek assistance by making a call at one of the neighboring houses in order to arrange for someone to come and pick him up. In light of her disappearance, Lessersane opted against consenting to a polygraph examination and promptly sought legal representation. During an extensive search conducted by the authorities in the vicinity, an important discovery was made consisting of Tabitha's eyeglasses, which she was identified as wearing. On the 23rd of December in the year 2019, law enforcement officials actively carried out a search warrant at a private dwelling located in her apartment block. As part of their efforts to shed light on her sudden disappearance, they urged members of the public to immediately contact the emergency services hotline if they possess any valuable information relating to her disappearance. In the month of February in the year 2020, there occurred an altercation involving Dennis Lessersane and Tabitha's estranged husband, Anthony Goines. Deputies promptly arrived at the scene following an urgent call. Upon their arrival, they discovered Dennis with visible cuts on both his face and neck, necessitating immediate medical attention. It was determined that his injuries required surgical intervention, and he was expeditiously transported to the hospital to undergo a specialized procedure for the purpose of effectively repairing the aforementioned lacerations. According to Lessersane, he encountered Tabitha's estranged husband while driving along Highway 87 South, prompting him to pull over and engage in a conversation with him. Lessersane provided this information to the authorities, who were investigating the situation. After engaging in a leisurely drive and engaging in conversation, Lessersane steered the vehicle towards the BP station located on Sand Hill Road. At this juncture, Goines, with an unexpected turn of events, produced a box cutter and proceeded to inflict harm upon Lessersane. The incident was swift, leaving Lessersane in a state of disbelief. In a significant turn of events, Goines found himself facing law enforcement. According to Tabitha's father, he holds the conviction that the incident is connected to her disappearance. Furthermore, his family firmly believes that Lessersane possesses additional information regarding Tabitha's vanishing that he has not disclosed to the authorities. The exact whereabouts and the specific details surrounding the disappearance of Tabitha are still a mystery to this day. Despite exhaustive investigations, no individuals have been identified as suspects or persons of interest in relation to her vanishing. The disappearance of Deanne Warner. Deanne Warner, a 52-year-old woman, went missing under mysterious circumstances in Franklin Township, Michigan, on April 25, 2021. The disappearance occurred right after a tense and emotionally charged argument with her husband, raising concerns about her well-being and safety. Deanne Warner, a native of Michigan, entered this world on June 30, 1968. Growing up amidst the tranquility of Lenawee County, a close-knit farming community that has been her family's home for 5 generations, she developed a deep connection to her roots. This remarkable individual holds a profound history that spans generations, shedding light on the close-knit fabric of her community. In the year 2006, Dee entered into matrimony with Dale John Warner, whom she encountered during her employment at a nearby firm engaged in agricultural sales. It is noteworthy that the union between Dee and Dale resulted from their professional association within the same industry. At the moment Dee went missing, she resided with her husband and daughter in a cozy residence situated on the peaceful Munger Road in Tecumseh, Michigan. It was within the vicinity of this serene abode that Dee diligently operated her own trucking and farming enterprise, utilizing the barns located at the back of her property. In the evening of April 24, 2021, Deanne Warner had made arrangements to engage in a heartfelt conversation with her husband, Dale Warner, pertaining to the difficult decision of separating or ending their marriage. The intention was to discuss the challenges in their relationship and possibly explore different paths going forward. At precisely 8:34 in the evening, a trusted family friend, who had kindly offered to look after their daughter over the weekend, arrived to pick her up. On that particular evening, Dee and her spouse engaged in a passionate disagreement centered around her business matters and a specific employee named Todd Nayrink, whom she had a previous altercation with earlier in the day. At precisely 10:52 in the evening, Dee found her phone buzzing with an incoming text message from a dear friend who expressed genuine concern. The message inquired about Dee's well-being and sought to ascertain how she was doing. By the conclusion of the evening, as reported by Dale Warner, the couple was able to resolve their differences and reconcile. A moment of serenity ensued when Dee, feeling the soothing effects of a massage, drifted off to sleep on the living room floor. Displaying tenderness and care, Warner gently lifted her and placed her on the couch before retiring for the night. According to reports on April 25, 2021, Dee was still in a slumber on the couch when her husband departed for work at 6:30 in the morning. In the morning, approximately at 9, Dee's grown-up daughter, along with her boyfriend and daughter, arrived at Deanne Warner's house in anticipation of their usual Sunday morning tradition of having breakfast together. However, to their surprise, Deanne Warner was conspicuously absent from her home. Deanne Warner, who left her home and has not been in contact since, remains missing. Concerned for her safety and well-being, her family took immediate action and formally reported her disappearance to the authorities at the Lenawee County Sheriff's Office. Deanne Warner mysteriously vanished, leaving behind her purse and cell phone. Interestingly, she left behind 2 vehicles, both of which were discovered neatly parked. One vehicle was found inside the garage of her residence, while the other was located at her office, only a mere 100 feet away. This puzzling disappearance raises numerous questions and instigates a deeper investigation into the circumstances surrounding her absence. During the night of April 24th, at around 11 in the evening, her mobile phone transitioned from being connected to Wi-Fi to relying on cellular service. However, by 2:30 in the morning, the phone completely lost power and became inoperable. Since that particular night, there has been no activity observed on her phone records, bank account, or social media platforms. Dale Warner held the belief that his wife, Deanne Warner, had departed that morning in the company of another man and had subsequently traveled outside the country. However, despite thorough scrutiny of surveillance footage, there was no visual evidence of Deanne Warner leaving the premises. Furthermore, it was discovered that her passport had not been utilized during this period. In their relentless pursuit of locating Deanne Warner, authorities painstakingly carried out numerous search operations, utilizing a wide range of resources and techniques. Helicopters scoured the skies, drones meticulously surveyed the area, radar systems scanned for any signs of her presence, and foot patrol teams tirelessly combed through the surroundings. As per the accounts provided by her family, Dee had made up her mind to initiate divorce proceedings and liquidate the business prior to her unexplained vanishing. It has been reported that she had been subjected to physical abuse by her spouse on numerous occasions, which compelled her to devise an escape plan from his clutches. On the date of August 9th, 2022, the Michigan State Police made an official statement, declaring their assumption of control over the ongoing investigation into the mysterious disappearance of Deanne Warner. In this complex case, they identified Dale John Warner as a person of interest, thus indicating a potential connection to the events surrounding his wife's vanishing. In September 2022, it was publicly disclosed that the offspring and close associates of Dee took the initiative to submit a formal request with the objective of legally confirming the occurrence of Dee's demise. There are suspicions of foul play surrounding the disappearance of Deanne Warner. To aid in the search for Deanne Warner, her family has established a reward of $50,000, which will be provided to anyone who can provide information leading to the location and discovery of Deanne Warner. The details surrounding Deanne Warner's vanishing are still shrouded in mystery, leaving her case classified as a missing persons investigation. Despite extensive efforts, the circumstances of her disappearance continue to elude authorities, rendering her case unsolved. The mystery of the Hopkinsville Goblin. It is believed that the Hopkinsville Goblin is an extraterrestrial species of unknown origin that was first encountered in the United States, in the small town of Hopkinsville, located in the state of Kentucky. The creature is not an individual entity, but rather a collection of similarly described humanoid figures that were encountered by the residents of the Sutton farmhouse, located nearby the town of Kelly in Christian County and the town of Hopkinsville. The creatures were described as being between 2 to 4 feet tall and possessing large pointed ears, hands that looked closer to that of claws, large eyes that glowed a yellow hue, and thin, spindly legs. Reported in detail on the 21st of August, in the year 1955, there was an impossible-to-explain incident that led to researchers theorizing that a previously unknown description of strange beings, later provided with the name of the Hopkinsville Goblins, had landed nearby a Kentucky farmhouse and made first contact with a family of 12, and demonstrated malevolent behavior that manifested into a vicious attack lasting for several hours. According to the police report surrounding the incident, the Hopkinsville Police Department reported that 5 adults and 7 children entered the police station with erratic behavior, having been described by the officers as appearing to be distraught and in a panic. The group of adults and children then reported to the police department that they had been in a gunfight, lasting for more than 4 hours, after a group of small alien creatures had come out of a nearby spaceship and began to attack them at their farmhouse. According to 2 witnesses of the event, 2 adults by the name of Elmer Sutton and Billy Ray Taylor, they claimed that there had been somewhere between 12 to 15 short humanoid figures that had repeatedly made an appearance at the doorway and peered in through the windows. In fear for their lives and unsure of what the creatures wanted, the invading creatures forced the family to open fire to prevent the unknown creatures from entering the home. As they would shoot the creatures, the witnesses claimed that the unknown monsters would make a loud pinging noise that sounded like the bullets were ricocheting off a metallic surface, causing the creatures to then fall to the floor momentarily, only to roll away and get back up after several seconds. Once revived, the creatures would resume trying to enter the home and make further attempts to enter through windows or doorways. The rest of the family provided a series of descriptions surrounding the creatures that they had believed were extraterrestrial beings, claiming that the small monsters stood at roughly 2 to 4 feet in height, had large pointed ears, claws for hands, and enlarged oval-shaped eyes that gave off a luminous yellow glow. Fearing that the shootout could have been evidence of neighboring families suffering from mass hysteria and attacking each other in the dark, the officers worked quickly to investigate the claims made by the Langford family. This led to the police department sending a total of 11 men, 4 city police, 3 deputy sheriffs, and 4 military police to the Sutton farmhouse to conduct an official investigation on the matter, leading to the officers discovering evidence of the gunfights, bullet holes, and clawed attempts to enter the home carved against the doors and windowsills. Police Chief Russell Greenwell reportedly found a glowing luminous stain nearby a fence on the property. Conflicting reports made by the military police claimed that police officer Richard Digby discovered the luminous stain. However, the compound was not gathered or tested for scientific study. A few hours following the investigation, the family would pack up their belongings and leave the farmhouse entirely. According to the family, their reason for their sudden departure was that the creatures had returned at around 3:30 in the morning and tried to re-enter their home once again. Events described as according to the Langford family's official police and subsequent news reports. The location of the incident took place at the Sutton farmhouse, owned by Mrs. Glennie Langford, located at the Gaither McGehee property found on Old Madisonville Road, Route 41, of Kelly, Kentucky, 8 miles north of Hopkinsville. The witnesses of the event totaled 11 people: Mrs. Glennie Langford, age 50, her youngest son Lonnie Langford, age 12, her eldest daughter Charlton Langford, age 10, her youngest daughter Mary Langford, age 7, her second-born son John Charlie J.C. Sutton, age 21, John Sutton's wife Aline Sutton, age 27, Aline Sutton's brother O.P. Baker, approximate age 30, her eldest son Elmer Lucky Sutton, age 25, and Elmer Sutton's wife Vera Sutton, age 29, Elmer Sutton's co-worker Billy Ray Taylor, age 21, and Billy Ray's wife June Taylor, age 18, totaling 8 legal adults and 3 children. It was a late Sunday evening, and the 3 families, the Langfords, Suttons and Taylors, were passing the time by playing cards and telling funny stories after dinner. The visiting co-workers had asked if there was any Kentucky moonshine or bottles of beer available for them to enjoy, but Mrs. Glennie Langford admitted to the visitors that she was a very strict religious follower and would not allow any form of alcohol to enter her home or be consumed in her house. Desperate for something to drink, Billy Ray Taylor went out the back door of the house with a bucket and made a short trip to the outdoor pump to retrieve a few gallons of well water. It was at this time, originally reported to have been sometime around 7 in the evening, or 8 in the evening when accounting for modern scheduled daylight savings time that took effect after 1955, that Billy Ray Taylor noticed what he described as a streak of bright light that moved across the sky coming from the southwest toward his location. Many unidentified object reports erroneously mistake the time of day as pointing towards evidence of a hoax, believing that the sun would not set for another 36 minutes, and so the streak of light was caused by a reflection of sunlight off nearby clouds. However, when taking into account that the original sighting report time would have been around 8 in the evening by modern daylight savings time conventions, the sun had set over 24 minutes prior to the sighting of the bright streaks. As the unexplainable light flew closer, Billy Ray Taylor claimed that he could see what he described as a large disc-shaped object with a variety of colors emitted from its rear landing several fields over, beyond the tree line, disappearing about a quarter of a mile away. In the distance, however, the faint glow of a bright yellowish light could be seen. Surprised by the sudden appearance of the craft, Billy Ray Taylor immediately fled back into the house and told the others what he had witnessed and said that they should all go investigate the craft, together. Believing that Billy Ray had mistaken a falling star for an aircraft, the others dismissed his claims and told him to calm down. Another hour went by as the 3 families continued passing time together before they began to hear the family dogs breaking out into sporadic barkings and violent squeals. Worried for the canines, Elmer Lucky Sutton went outside to investigate the cause of their sudden barking, joined by Billy Ray Taylor, who had grown increasingly hysterical after his sighting of the unidentified flying object only moments before. It was at this moment that the 2 men claimed to have witnessed a strange creature slowly approaching the house, causing the dogs to flee and crawl underneath the house for protection. Panicked by the sighting, the 2 men ran back into the house and immediately began arming themselves. Armed, Elmer Sutton exited the farmhouse and stepped out onto the front porch with Billy Ray Taylor close behind. Illuminated by the light of the house, the 2 men could more accurately see the strange creature and described it as being approximately 3 to 4 feet in height, with an enlarged head and long, sharply pointed ears on either side. The eyes of the creature were described as being positioned more on the sides of the head and emitted a faint, yellowish glow. The creature had long, thin arms that reached almost to the ground that were equipped with long, webbed fingers that ended in sharp, pointed claws on the tips of its fingers. Its legs were described as being abnormally short, as the creature appeared to have floated above the ground. The rest of its body gave off a faint reflective glow, as if it was encased in a protective layer of finely polished metal. Mrs. Glennie Langford would later provide the testimony that she had witnessed the strange creature lift its hands above its head as it approached the house. Believing the creature to be raising its hands in peace, she told the 2 men not to fire at the creature to allow it to approach closer. Whether or not the 2 men had heard Mrs. Langford, however, is unknown, as the 2 men opened fire on the creature, causing it to flip over backwards when struck by the bullets. The witnesses claimed that the sound of the bullets hitting the creature was similar to that of a bullet striking the side of a metal bucket. Immediately after falling to the ground, the metallic creature rose back to an upright position and ran off into the darkness, using an odd form of motion that the witnesses reported came from the hips and not from the motions of its legs. The 2 men and Mrs. Glennie Langford returned to the house and told the others what they had witnessed and began to arm themselves with whatever weapons they could find around the house, which included several rifles, shotguns, and pistols, alongside enough boxes of ammo to hold off a small army. As the three families were in the living room of the home, discussing what they were to do next, they noticed a metallic creature of similar design suddenly appear in the window, trying to peer into the house as if making an attempt to enter the home by force. John Sutton then fired at the living room window, causing the creature to fall backwards and hit the ground. Believing now that they were under attack, Elmer Sutton and Billy Ray went outside to check the perimeter of the house to make sure that the creature was gone. After Elmer had stepped off the porch and onto the front grass, with Billy Ray close behind, Aline Sutton noticed a long clawed hand reaching down from the porch's rooftop towards Billy Ray Taylor's head. She screamed for him to look up and to watch out for the creature's hand. At this point, Billy Ray Taylor was pulled back into the house by Aline Sutton, and Elmer Sutton turned around and began firing at the creature on the rooftop from the front yard, knocking the creature off the roof and disappearing into the nearby weeds. Billy Ray Sutton then began to realize that there was more than one creature and exited the house while pointing over at the property's adjacent tree line. Elmer Sutton and Billy Ray noticed another creature of similar design hiding in the nearby maple tree. The two men opened fire on the creature, which jumped down and slowly descended onto the yard before it moved away from the house and deeper into the tree line, with its hips swaying in a strange motion and its short legs floating above the ground. Billy Ray and Elmer Sutton chased the creature further into the tree line, firing after it until it was away from the property, a significant distance. When they returned to the house, they claimed to have seen another of the metallic creatures peeking around the side of the farmhouse, looking as if it was trying to find a side window to enter through. The two men fired at the creature until it was on the ground, which echoed the sound of metallic strikes, and began to approach the creature as they continued firing. Before the men could get too close, however, the creature levitated back up to an upright position and escaped. Spending another 20 minutes outside the home, looking around the property and the rooftop of the house, the two men noticed another metallic creature on the top of the house, and so began to fire multiple shots at the creature until it began descending 40 feet away from the rooftop and hovered over a fence located on the property. Chasing the creature, the two men went after the creature while firing, forcing the monster off the property as it fled away into the darkness. Failing to find any more of the creatures on or around the house, the two men re-entered the home and told the others what they had seen and that the single creature was more accurately a group of creatures. The children were told to stay under the beds, while the adults argued about what they were going to do and whether or not what was happening was some kind of elaborate prank being pulled on each other by other members of the house. More than 20 minutes passed without any sign of the creatures returning, at which point the family began to realize that their weapons were ineffective against the monsters and would not be able to repel them for long, and so decided that hiding in different areas around the house would be far more effective, in the hopes of waiting out the creatures until the morning arrived. While the occupants of the house waited, switching between hiding places and crouching by the windows and doors, the sounds of scratching and clawing would emanate from the rooftop. Before long, Mrs. Glennie Langford would scream to the men that she could see through the window that one of the metallic creatures was approaching the front door of the home and making an attempt to enter the house. Reacting quickly, Billy Ray Taylor opened the front door and fired several rounds through the screen door, completely destroying the lining of the screen door and causing the metallic creature to fly backwards onto the front yard. Mrs. Glennie Langford would later provide the testimony that the metallic creature that approached the front door had a design that differed greatly from the other reported metallic creatures, describing the creature as having the barrel-shaped body of a shiny silver 5-gallon kerosene can, supported by two skinny legs that touched the ground with a large head attached to the top of the body. Her description of the creature appears to imply that the creature was artificial in nature and possibly a metal automaton. As time passed, the surrounding metallic creatures made several more attempts to enter the house, appearing in windows and approaching the front door, but were warded off with gunfire at each attempt. The residents of the house estimated that at the height of the invasion attempts, there were somewhere between 12 to 15 of the metallic creatures at any one time, but reports themselves show that the attack could have been caused by two metallic creatures making repeat appearances. After several hours of the attack had passed, the three families began to worry that they would not be able to hold out for much longer, and began making attempts to conserve what remained of their ammunition, which was running thin. It was at around 11, a total of 3 hours after the invasion began, that the family made their first attempt to evacuate the home and contact the police. After planning out a thorough route that the 11 residents of the farmhouse could take together as a group to Elmer Sutton's and Billy Ray Taylor's car, the children and the wives quickly started to pack necessary belongings and prepared for their journey to the vehicles. When the attack slowed down, the adults formed a protective layer around the children, with the 3 armed men forming an outer offensive perimeter as they moved together as a group to separate vehicles. Once everyone was inside the vehicles, the families drove together to the nearest police station, 8 miles away in Hopkinsville. Many of the witnesses that had a direct and clear line of sight of the Hopkinsville goblins described the metallic creatures as demonstrating a peculiar form of flight capabilities. Rather than walking on the ground with a standard form of locomotion, they hovered only a few feet above the ground. When dropping from tree lines or rooftops, the creatures would slowly descend to the ground only to hover several feet above the ground, as if the creature was not capable of having a prolonged form of flight at a height greater than several feet. Due to their metallic nature, the artificial glowing eyes, the strange body shape, and the unexplainable form of levitation, it is believed that the Hopkinsville goblin is a robotic entity created and used by the nearby unidentified flying object for an unknown purpose. If it is to be believed that the creature is a robotic entity, then the hovering abilities are most likely caused by a mechanical form of flight that does not make significant noise, such as lighter-than-air processes, or ionic propulsion, or both. Reports show that officers discovered a luminous liquid material near the fence line of the property, which matches the claims made by Elmer Sutton and Billy Ray Taylor of firing at one of the creatures as it hovered over the fence. The luminous material provides evidence that the makeup of the creature is artificial in nature, and a form of coolant or oil could be made luminous for ease of repair, as a luminous compound would be easy to spot, and the coloring could be an easy indicator of which system might be leaking. The levitating form of locomotion of the creatures implies that the robots were most likely designed for zero-gravity environments, as the need for levitation of any kind would be far less efficient in gravity-heavy environments when compared to standard forms of locomotion. The creatures appeared to have a deeper knowledge of the psychological profile of human beings, consistently demonstrating behaviors that would require intensive study of the human mind and empathetic actions. Although it could have been possible that the Hopkinsville goblins were limited in its flight capabilities, reports showed that the creatures had the ability to levitate to heights that would allow them to get on top of rooftops and hide in trees, demonstrating that the creatures were more than capable of flying at much greater heights. The option then to fly at hovering heights could have been an empathetic move to appear more humanoid and less intimidating by remaining at much smaller heights when compared to the residents. When the creature raised its hands above its head, according to the testimony of Mrs. Glennie Langford, it demonstrated a knowledge of human body language, appearing to make an attempt at establishing a peaceful first contact. Such a behavior is atypical of any known creature and is evidence that the study of human body language took place. The creature's design is seemingly humanoid, which could have been a design choice that was made with empathetic connection in mind. It would be much easier for human beings to empathize and relate to a creature that is more similar in design to a humanoid figure rather than a more terrifying shape. And so the choice of humanoid designs over a robotic design that is far more efficient could be evidence of psychological understanding. Evidence as to their artificial nature is demonstrated in the complete lack of self-preservation on the creature's part and the performance of repeated actions, regardless of the changing conditions. Even after being shot and leaking luminous fluid, the creatures continued making repeated attempts at entering through the front door and peering through the window, of which would be anomalous behavior of any advanced intelligent life. The seemingly incompetent behavior points to an artificial intelligence or conditional programming.
The Blackbeard merfolk sighting. Edward Blackbeard Teach is remembered as one of the most fearsome men to have ever lived, becoming a legend during his own lifetime as one of the greatest pirates to have ever lived. Although his reign as a pirate only lasted a short 2 years, it was the terrifying cruelty of Blackbeard that cemented him as a legend. Many merchants and fishermen would often claim that when in battle against Blackbeard, they had believed him to be the devil himself, due to the fact that he would often put smoking fuses in his long black hair and beard and strapped weapons on his body to make himself look less human and more like a monster. It is for this reason that experts find it extremely peculiar that Blackbeard often wrote that his number one fear of the open sea was that of his mermaid sightings made in specific regions. Blackbeard often wrote that he believed the sighting of the creatures were an omen of bad luck, and that they had made attempts to drag him under the water and steal his gold. Blackbeard would often end his logbook reports with warnings to his crew members of the enchanting powers of the mermaids and never to revisit the areas of his sightings. The missing Prime Minister. On the 17th of December 1967, Prime Minister of Australia Harold Holt disappeared into the waters near Portsea, Victoria. Widely believed to be merely a swimming accident, various theories began to pile up. This is most likely because Holt's body was never recovered from the waters. Holt became Prime Minister in January 1966. Holt initially denied having security, deeming it unnecessary and making him seem impersonal to the public. This changed later, after a window of his office was sniped out and a later assassination attempt was made on the leader of the opposition. He finally agreed to one bodyguard but never took one on any vacations. Speaking of vacations, Holt was an avid outdoorsman. He had a fondness for spearfishing and would fish year-round. He also snorkeled, preferring the freedom versus the cumbersome weight of a tank. He is described as having incredible powers of endurance underwater. That being the case, however, Holt still had two near misses in the water, one which he blamed on a leaking snorkel, and one he blamed on chasing a fish while spearfishing. The morning of his disappearance began normally. Holt awoke early in his vacation house in Portsea, called his wife, and stopped at a general store. The items he purchased did not seem out of character: insect repellent, peanuts, and some newspapers. Holt spent the morning with friends, with a notable stop in Port Phillip Bay to catch a glimpse of a solo circumnavigator coming through. On the way home, in typical Holt fashion, he suggested they all stop for a swim at Cheviot Beach. His reasonings were the hot day and wanting to work up an appetite for the barbecue lunch they had planned to enjoy. Holt was familiar with the area, having spent lots of time swimming and fishing in the area. He had even once retrieved a porthole from a shipwreck in the area. Holt was the only one to venture deep into the water. Others deemed it unsafe due to a visible swell and undertow. Holt swam deeper out into the ocean, despite the calls from his friends, and without a wave or call for help, Holt simply slipped beneath the water. The search for Holt's body went on until January 5, 1968. A formal investigation deemed it an accidental drowning, stating Holt took a risk that day and paid the price for it. They found no evidence to prove otherwise. They went on further to explain that if sea creatures had gotten a hold of his body, he would have been reduced to bones within days. This would explain the lack of body being found. It all sounds so cut and dry, but soon enough, theories began to surface. Some theories claim he ended his life, fearing his political career was ending. The police report specifically ruled out this theory. However, as Holt carried on his ordinary routines, his wife went on to say that she believed him too selfish to commit suicide. Other more crazy ideas involve a Chinese submarine rescuing their lifelong spy and being killed by a Vietnamese nerve agent, all of which have been marked as nonsense from Holt's family. In Australia, Holt's death is often the subject of dark humour. It has impacted their slang. Instead of bolting, one would do a Harold Holt. His death has even inspired a storyline on an Australian soap opera. Whatever locals believe, it is obvious Holt's disappearance has impacted the lives of those he served. Pedro Oliva Ramirez, the man who travelled to a parallel universe. Our last mysterious individual is Pedro Oliva Ramirez from Seville, Spain. He was driving home one night when he experienced something unlike anything he'd experienced before. The start of his drive was normal, but it was once he laid eyes on the open land that was about 100 meters away where he could see 5 or 6 industries. When he looked over to the other side, he saw the same phenomenon, only there were residential buildings. He felt as if the landscape was a little unusual and then started to feel a strong sensation of heat invading his vehicle. He also described seeing a great soccer goal many meters ahead from the car and he had to pass through. He heard voices, one of which confirmed that he had been transferred to another country in a different hemisphere. He continued driving along the road for about an hour until he decided to stop. He got out of his car and walked along the edge of the road for many hours, looking at the lights of other vehicles and the grass. He got back in his car and continued driving until he found a triple sign with directions. He took a detour towards Seville and got lost. He tried to retrace his steps but never found the sign again and could not relocate the large 6-lane highway he had previously been travelling on. When looking back on the maps, he wasn't able to find such a highway to begin with. After further investigation, Ramirez concluded that he must have passed over into another dimension while driving home that day. Of course, no one is able to confirm his experience to be true, so we'll have to go off his word for now. Maybe one day in the future we will be better equipped to understand what happened, and if time travel was possible when Ramirez had this unusual experience. After taking a look at the lives of these 3 interesting and mysterious individuals, do you believe that time travel is real? With no real evidence to back each story, it's challenging to believe it entirely. With more people coming forward with stories related to teleportation and time travel, maybe we'll experience it for ourselves at some point. Until then, we can only choose to believe it's a real possibility if we want to. The disappearance of Sharon Buis. On May 23, 2014, Sharon Gay Buis disappeared from the Mount Roberts Trail in Alaska. She was last seen at 9:30 a.m. that morning at the Alaska Marine Line store in downtown Juneau. The 48-year-old was hiking solo and had not notified any friends or family about her plans. She was supposed to meet with a friend the next day at 8:45 a.m. to go hiking together, but failed to show. After some time, she was reported missing, but troopers have not found any clues of her whereabouts to this day. Sharon Buis was a physical therapist working for Juneau Physical Therapy and had lived in Juneau for a decade by the time of her disappearance. She also ran a side business where she sold orthopedic office chairs. She was shipping out 2 chairs at Alaska Marine Lines the day that she went missing. Buis was an experienced hiker and had recently returned from Greenland, where she went ice camping. She had even biked from Alaska to Canada at one point and enjoyed running, kayaking, and playing hockey. Buis was always active, so her longtime hiking partner was very confused when she did not show up that morning. Buis owned an emergency GPS, but left it at home that day along with her overnight backpack. Police assumed her cell phone was with her, but it was most likely turned off as the phone company could not ping its location. Ann Johnson called the police and filed a missing person report after Buis failed to show up for their Hawthorne Peaks hike. Feeling uneasy about the situation, Johnson drove around that evening to various trailheads looking for Buis's car. She eventually found it parked at Mount Roberts Trailhead at 9:30 p.m. on May 24, 2014. The search began at 1 a.m. on May 25th and covered the entire Mount Juneau trail system and backcountry over 4 days. The U.S. Coast Guard, Alaska State Troopers, Southeast Alaska Dogs, and the Alpine Club all joined the search and rescue alongside her family and friends. The Coast Guard even brought in a helicopter to use FLIR thermal imaging and night vision to find her, but were unsuccessful. The search team utilized aerial support wherever the ground was too dangerous for searchers to explore, such as ravines or ridgelines. A search dog picked up her scent near the Mount Roberts Trailhead parking lot after a few days. But that was it. The search lasted only 4 days before the state troopers called it off, much to the dismay of Buis's loved ones. The searchers had covered so much ground and double-checked everywhere that they were confident she was not there. Over the next few months, occasional leads would turn up and give them hope, such as a hiker who reported a bear and a decaying odor, but nothing ever panned out. Some groups conducted additional search attempts around the trail and the abandoned mine shafts nearby, but never found any evidence suggesting Buis's presence. They have combed through that trailhead so often that it is surprising they have not been able to find anything. The police and troopers explained that Buis might have gotten lost or injured in an area inaccessible to ground searchers. Another theory is that she was attacked by an animal, although they found no evidence of that. Another idea was that she was a victim of foul play. Her car was at the trailhead, but did she even make it up onto the trail? The police never managed to find information about Sharon Buis's disappearance, so it remains an open case 7 years later. Gabriel Nagy. Sometimes people go missing and are never seen or heard from again, leaving their families to conclude, after years of waiting, that they must have met some unfortunate end. This appeared to be the case with Gabriel Nagy, who disappeared from Sydney, Australia one afternoon in 1987. A devoted husband and father to 2 children, Nagy was an incredibly hard worker who supported his family by working successful construction jobs while attending accounting classes at night. On that fateful day, Nagy had spent the morning running errands in town and called his wife Pamela to let her know that he was on his way home for lunch. Pamela got his lunch ready, but when he did not return after several hours, she became increasingly worried, and that worry turned into outright panic when Nagy's car was discovered on the side of the road. The car was burned, and Gabriel was nowhere to be found. His distraught family was left to wonder what had happened and where their father and husband went. 2 weeks after his car was found, Nagy withdrew money from a bank in Newcastle, almost 100 miles from Sydney, confirming that he was out there somewhere and still alive. However, no other clues or leads turned up for over 2 decades, and his family had long ago lost hope that they would ever see him again. Finally, during preparations to declare Nagy officially dead after being missing for so long, a police officer combing public records one final time noticed that a man of the same name, who also went by Ron Saunders, had appeared in medical records from a recent surgery. The officer travelled to the location of the surgery in a town called Mackay, almost 1,000 miles from Sydney, and tracked down Nagy at last. It turned out that he had developed dissociative fugue as a result of the crash, resulting in retrograde amnesia that caused him to forget about his life prior to the accident. With no idea who he was, he spent the intervening years mostly homeless, wandering from city to city. He called himself Ron Saunders because he had seen a sign for Saunders Beach during his wanderings and, not knowing his real name, thought that it sounded nice. After his discovery, as he read letters and saw pictures from before his accident, his memory slowly began to return in hazy pieces, and he was reunited with his family. Although he and his wife and children still live separately, his family is all supportive of Nagy as he navigates this new life that he was unaware that he even had, and begins to rebuild the relationships with those who had believed him dead for 20 years. The Cassie Nicole boat. On April 10, 1990, a snapper boat set off on a fishing expedition in the Atlantic Ocean. For the majority of the previous month, the ship had been undergoing maintenance, and on the second day of the expedition, at allegedly 4:30 a.m., one of the crew members, Nathan, noticed that there was something wrong with the ship. It was stagnant and churning forward in a worryingly unstable manner. Brothers Nathan and the captain Billy Joe Neesmith discovered a store of water in the hold, and the pumps were no longer running. The power went out, and any attempts to get help through the radio were futile. Nathan woke up the other 2 crew members, Keith Wilkes and Franklin Brantley, who attempted to gather and pour the water overboard using buckets, but this failed as the boat continued to sink deeper into the waves. Captain Neesmith ordered for the ship to be abandoned since they would not be able to salvage it. Fortunately, they had a raft on board, which they all decided to board, but the raft was run down and had not been adequately cared for during the ship's maintenance, and a fungus had gotten into the wood, rotting it from within. The raft was small, and the 4 men struggled to fit onto it. They floated upon the waves until the hull of their sunken boat drifted towards them. Nathan decided to attempt riding on the hatch drifting nearby, despite the pleas from his fellow crew members to remain on the raft. They had no way of knowing what would happen if touching the shipwreck was safe, not to mention they feared the possibility of being split up on the vast, dark ocean. Nathan swam until he reached the submerged hull. but the dark dusk concealed his vision of the raft. By the morning of April 12th, he saw a freighter in the distance which circled around his crewmates for several hours, but the freighter never came for him. Fate seemed grim for Nathan, but then the ship's bait box broke off and he saved himself by turning it into a raft just before the whole boat sunk into the Atlantic. He was rescued on April 15th, 1990, terribly sunburnt and on the verge of death from dehydration. He hoped to be reunited with his crewmates, but this chance never arrived because, despite a search by the US Coast Guard, his 3 crewmates were missing. Nathan believes that the freighter which saved them dropped them off in a different nation. Oneida, the sister of Nathan and Captain Billie Jo Neesmith, received a strange call from someone speaking Spanish, but the only thing she understood was her name and phone number before the caller hung up. The owner of the snapper boat, Mr. Tyson, received a similar call from someone speaking broken English. Oneida and Tyson received 3 more calls between them until 1991, when the caller said, "I am bringing them home," in comprehensive English. Oneida stated in her testimony that the caller must have been a Spanish-speaking native from another country who found or befriended the 3 crew members. The 3 men, Billie Jo Neesmith, Keith Wilkes and Franklin Brantley, are still lost at sea and have officially been declared deceased. Despite this, the strange calls suggest they were alive and on their way home. Since then, there has been no contact at all with either Mr. Tyson or Oneida. Despite the fact 30 years have now passed, their families still pray for their safe return. The unsolved disappearance of Thomas Nuzzi. Thomas Nuzzi's family has been searching for him for the last decade after he mysteriously vanished on June 18, 2001. He was last seen by friends 3 days prior and was finally reported missing after failing to show up to work in Bethel, Alaska on the 19th. The last image of him was taken on the 18th at a gasoline station near the Super 8 Hotel on Minnesota Drive in Anchorage, where he was staying. Authorities found a receipt that showed Nuzzi had purchased chips, soda, 2 lighters and a pack of cigarettes at the gas station at 9:47 p.m. He was never seen or heard from after this. Police believe Nuzzi was on foot when he disappeared, since his Jeep Cherokee was found 12 miles outside of the city at the Alpenglow ski area in Chugach State Park, and his bicycle was at his unlocked storage unit. Apparently, on June 15th, a woman and another man attempted to break into Nuzzi's car at the hotel, as reported by a security guard. The woman was also captured on the surveillance camera standing next to Nuzzi at the gas station. On his last known day, the same couple was once again spotted breaking into the Jeep. This time, the man was successful and drove off with the car. The following day, the day Nuzzi was reported as missing, a housekeeper of the hotel saw a man on Nuzzi's hotel room floor. When she came back later in the afternoon, the same man was sitting on the bed. He was not Nuzzi, and she made him leave the room. Police consider the couple as persons of interest to the case, but have not been identified or seen since. The woman is small, about 5 foot 2 inches and 105 pounds, Caucasian with medium-long dark hair, and possibly in her 20s. The man is dark-skinned, tall, thin, and has decaying teeth. They are suspected of having used Nuzzi's phone, since all the recent calls on his phone were traced to unknown numbers. Many of the numbers are connected to motels, pages, and a halfway house. Nuzzi's nephew called back every single call, missed, dialed, or received, but none of the people who answered him had ever heard of his uncle before. Despite an extensive search for clues by authorities, they were unable to turn up any evidence or leads to Nuzzi's disappearance. He lived a quiet and reclusive life, working as a registered nurse and often traveling around the state for his employment. Because of this, he did not even have a permanent address and opted to live out of hotels. He has never been seen since that day, and his case remains unsolved. The Shanti Devi Story. The story of Shanti Devi is among the most amazing documentation of reincarnation, attracting the attention of everyone, including Mahatma Gandhi. Born in India's New Delhi on the 11th of December 1926, Shanti did not speak much in her first years, unlike many young children. When she reached 4 years, however, she started speaking about her memories of another life that she lived. She said that her home was not in Delhi, but instead 93 miles away in Mathura, where she lived with her husband, and she insisted that she had to go back to her son and husband. Her parents discouraged her from speaking of her previous life, telling her to put it behind her and be concerned about the present, which annoyed her and made her run away from home to Mathura. She was found and taken back to her parents. She started speaking of her previous life during school in detail and was even able to recall the names of her husband, children, and what happened when she lost her life. She died 9 days after giving birth. This information enabled the headmaster to locate a man named Kedar Nath, who had lost his wife Ludji 9 years ago, 10 days after childbirth. Kedar visited Shanti and her parents using a false name, and she soon identified him as her previous life husband. Mahatma Gandhi was informed of the events and possible reincarnation, and he set up a team to investigate the story. Shanti and the team went to Mathura, where she recognized her home, the furniture layout, and even her family members. She remembered some secrets of family members that someone would only know in confidence. Shanti was also able to tell her husband that he did not keep the promises that he had made to her. She also started speaking in her local dialect. The team concluded irrefutably that Shanti Devi was a reincarnation of Lugdi Devi. Several other researchers did their independent investigations and came to the same conclusion. Zach Baggins and the Conjuring House. Ghost hunter, TV presenter and all-round creep-loving guy Zach Baggins has been surrounded by ghouls and ghosts for most of his professional life. The host of the show Ghost Adventures, Baggins also owns his own haunted museum in Nevada. Despite becoming accustomed to the spooks of the underworld, Baggins reportedly isn't immune to the effects that his area of interest has on people. Dubbed the modern Ed and Lorraine Warren, Baggins paid a visit to the legendary Harrisville farmhouse in Rhode Island, which is the real-life setting for the Conjuring film franchise. The original owners of the home, depicted in the films, spoke of how the Warrens knew that they had their hands full when they entered the farmhouse to investigate alleged incidents of possession and poltergeist activity. When Baggins entered the farmhouse to explore it himself, things began to go wrong. Baggins allegedly began to complain of chest pains and dizziness, as well as difficulty breathing. Baggins declared himself unwell and described how he just didn't want to be around anybody. He insisted that he didn't feel possessed and how he would know what that felt like. He described his feeling as if something was drawing life out of him into some sort of entity or atmosphere. Scarily, like many who had been to the farmhouse before, Baggins too knew there was a presence there. Baggins, the Warrens, and others have all felt a strange and eerie presence in the Harrisville farmhouse, and it could well be one of the most haunted places in America. The disappearance of Bruno Manza. On May 25, 2000, Swiss environmentalist Bruno Manza disappeared in the Borneo forests and has never been seen since. He was declared legally deceased 5 years later, as there was no sign or evidence of him found. He was 45 at the time and had spent the past 10 years fighting the Malaysian government and logging companies on behalf of the Penan, the indigenous jungle nomads of Borneo. Manza wanted to live a life without consumerism, capitalism, and technological advancements. As a young adult, he refused the Swiss military draft and served a few months in jail. He then moved to the Alps to work as a cow and sheep herder and learned how to make his own tools and food. He became enchanted with this type of simple living. Switzerland was not enough for him, so at 30 years old, he travelled to Borneo. He soon learned about the Penan nomadic tribes and decided to try and find them and live with them. After searching the dense Sarawak jungle in Malaysia, he finally came in contact with them in May 1984. After some time, the Penan accepted his presence and he began to learn their language and culture. He grew out his hair into their traditional mullet, wore a loincloth, walked barefoot, and even hunted with a blow dart. The Penan nicknamed him Laki Penan, which means Penan Man. They respected him and considered him one of their own. The politics in Borneo grew more complicated and aggressive, as the government backed the logging companies who were destroying the forests and desecrating sacred lands. The deforestation contaminated their drinking water, significantly reduced the vegetation and game, and limited the tribe in their movements. Mansa began to work alongside the Penan in their attempts to thwart the loggers. Over the next decade, he would go back almost every year to visit the tribe, usually by illegally crossing the border out of Indonesia to get to them, and would assist them in their battle with the loggers. He travelled the world and held lectures, protests and strikes to garner attention to the Penan's plight. He set up a fund to give aid to the indigenous people in the forest, and the cause eventually gained notoriety around the world. Politicians and leaders around the world condemned the deforestation, which angered the Malaysian government. They denied him entry and put a bounty on his head when he swam across the border at night. He was enemy number one of the state and escaped capture numerous times by using a fake passport and changing his appearance, running away while an officer was distracted and using the rivers and forest undergrowth to hide. In February of 2000, Mansa began his last trek to the Sarawak forest. He first travelled with the secretary of his fund, BMF, and a film crew. After a while, they left, and he continued with a different friend for a few weeks until they arrived at the Sarawak-Kalimantan border. Mansa, aided by a local guide, crossed the border on the 22nd of May. The last known sighting of him was on May 25th, when a local Penan and his son journeyed with him to the mountain Bukit Batu Lawi. Mansa intended to ascend the mountain alone. Searches and expeditions were conducted by Penan teams and members of the BMF, but to no avail. There were conspiracies that the Malaysian government ended his life, but those close to him believe he either fell down the mountain or took his own life. After his disappearance, he was awarded the International Society for Human Rights Prize and had a new species of goblin spider named after him. 10 years after his disappearance, a memorial service was held in Basel, Switzerland, to which 500 people attended. There have been films and books made about his story. The Black Mountain. Known as Kalkajaka by the indigenous peoples living there, Black Mountain has its fair share of haunted stories and legends. This mountain is situated along the Trefethen Range in northern Queensland. It is made up of many giant granite boulders. Kalkajaka translates to spear and was named for the last battleground between the inland and coastal clans as they fought for hunting grounds. It is a massive graveyard for their fallen warriors and is believed to be a place where devils and spirits wander about. The indigenous peoples in this area are taught to respect the mountain and actively avoid going there. They believe that you will get very sick if you visit it and that the spirits living there will torment you. The legends say that there are dark forces at work within the mountain, so they do not like when people visit it. Once settlers started arriving to colonize the lands in the 1800s, they also added onto these legends with their own experiences. Dozens of men have attempted to visit the mountain, but none ever made it back. Men, their horses, and entire herds of cattle have gone missing from this mountain. Infamous criminals ran into the mountain and caves to escape law enforcement and were never found, despite intensive searches of the surrounding areas. Even the trackers that were sent in to find missing people also disappeared. There was only one case of a police officer who returned, but he was so distraught and unhinged that he was unable to ever give a report on it. It is nicknamed the Bermuda Triangle of northern Queensland, as no one can fully explain what happens there. People who live nearby report eerie sounds that occur, especially during the night. When the wind blows through the rocks, it sounds like people or spirits screaming. When it rains and the rocks break down and fall, it sounds as if an explosion has just gone off. Some theories say that it is a man-made pyramid as it is located on one of the meridian points on our planet. In reality, it is just hard granite that was formed underneath the Earth's surface and was gradually exposed as the surface above it eroded. Weather shaped the rock into boulders and created deep fractures and cliffs. The dark colour of the rock is also due to the blue-green algae that grows on it. Despite knowing how the rocks were formed, there is still no concrete explanation for all the missing persons. It is an extremely dangerous hike to get to the top of the mountain. It requires you to jump from rock to rock, where any misstep can cause you to fall. The indigenous people dislike it when adventurers come to hike the mountain, as they don't show any respect for it. If you want to visit it, you should take a guided tour led by the indigenous clans so that they can teach you about the cultural significance of it. Most people don't believe in the spirits that haunt the mountain, but they are still wary of the mountain. Some superstitions cannot be ignored. There is just something about Black Mountain that unnerves people. The disappearance of Mel Wiley. Police Chief Mel Wiley was last seen on July 27, 1985, on a date with his girlfriend in Hinckley Township, a suburb of Cleveland. His car was found on July 30th at Lakefront State Park on Lake Erie in Cleveland, Ohio. Police performed a thorough search of the area and found no sign of Wiley. After searching his car, which was still locked, they found his wallet with $15 in cash, his police ID and badge, some sunscreen, a pack of cigarettes, and a beach towel. After performing an investigation among Wiley's friends, family, and co-workers, authorities ruled out the possibility of foul play. Wiley left work early a lot and seemed moody in the weeks before his disappearance. His friends believed that he had grown tired of his job but did not think anything of it. He had always wanted to retire at 50, so he could write full-time, but he ended up disappearing 3 years before retirement. In his spare time, Wiley wrote poetry and was a thriller mystery novelist. Before his disappearance, he was writing a novel about a homicide in Pennsylvania that he often spoke of to anyone that would listen. When police entered Wiley's home, it was spotless, and he had also left several days of food and water out for his 2 cats. After an extensive search through his belongings, his thriller manuscript was nowhere to be found. Other missing things were stamps, envelopes, his music collection, typewriter paper, and an address book. Most of his long-sleeve shirts were missing, which he frequently wore to cover the burns on his arms that he had suffered while serving in the military. The only thing left in his fridge was a jar of mayonnaise. The police later found out that his desk at the police station was empty as well, except for a key to his apartment. At this point, it was as if Wiley had merely vanished into thin air. But after picking up his dry cleaning, police found the first of many strange clues. Located in the pocket of his police uniform were bus schedules from Cleveland to San Francisco. Wiley had written a letter to a female friend before his disappearance. He had expressed that he wanted to disappear and was tired of his life in Hinckley. The letter stated that he would be 2,500 miles away when his friend would receive his letter, roughly the distance between Cleveland and San Francisco. Police were able to decipher the letter by looking at the ribbon on his office typewriter. Investigators were never able to track down the original letter, and it appears that the friend never received it. As a police chief, Mel had access to all he would need to form a new identity directly at his fingertips. With access to a database of fingerprints and social security information, it is entirely possible that Mel leveraged his years in law enforcement to facilitate his disappearance. With his military background and several years in law enforcement, he would also know how to stay off the radar. Mel was the only suspect in his own case. He was declared legally deceased in 1993 per Ohio law, once he had been missing for 5 years. Mel could very well be enjoying his remaining years writing poetry and novels on the West Coast today. Having a passion for writing mysteries, Wiley's most tremendous story appears to have been the one of his own disappearance. Craig Williamson, who disappeared, was discovered with memory loss. Craig Williamson, a Wisconsin guy that went missing while out on a work trip in Colorado 2 years ago, is alive today and well in Key West, Florida. According to officials, Williamson is said to be a driver in Florida. after being violently attacked on August 30th, 1993 at a pub or convenience shop in Colorado, he recently informed police that he lost his memory. Williamson's story, however, corresponds to a view advanced by his widow, Christine Reinhardt, who garnered global attention to her husband's abduction. Her statewide lookup for Williamson does include clip-on national TV programs and numerous media articles in multiple states. "I have no authority to speak on the subject. I'm stunned," Ms. Reinhardt, who relocated from Wisconsin to Cody, Wyoming, roughly a year ago just after the couple's fishery closed, stated. She explained, "We're trying hard to keep it a family matter till we can address some concerns, because presently we're both very vulnerable. Craig's mental reaction is quite fragile." She furthermore defined her husband as experiencing an exceptionally incapacitated recollection and even being very suspicious or frightened, with whom she had spoken on the mobile device at least 2 or 3 times over the last week. El Paso County Sheriff's detectives are delighted to bring the case to an end after years and years of effort by state and federal investigators and a financial cost of approximately $12,000 since August 31st, 1993. Williamson must have traveled to Colorado in late August in an old-fashioned bus intending to purchase fish from the fisheries around Alamosa. However, he vanished before he could even secure his cargo. The majority of Williamson's things were discovered in the lodge bedroom and at the bus station nearby. They investigated the case as a suspected assassination despite the lack of traces of resistance. Williamson's subsequent communications with Ms. Reinhardt, as well as his old girlfriend in Wisconsin, led detectives to the Florida harbor in which he had resided for the past 9 months. Authorities are not sure what happened to Williamson before he vanished. Williamson, on the other hand, reportedly told authorities how he was brutally injured and awoke in a hospital wearing a bracelet with the moniker Ron on it. He then spent 18 months in Key West, riding public transport aimlessly. Williamson's recall was questioned by the sheriff's captain, Lou Smith, who assisted with the inquiry. He said that shavings from Williamson's moustache were recovered in the discarded hire truck, which was clipped using blades from lab personnel. Smith speculated he was presumably altering his look. Williamson was carrying $2,500 in cash before he vanished, and he might have been fleeing an onerous responsibility from his new company. The duo had put all they possessed into the fish farm, plus an additional $400,000. Smith claims that the answer can only be revealed if Williamson, who did not answer a journalist's call, reveals it. If only Williamson requests it, police will look into the charges of harassment.
The mysterious Silbury Hill incident. Silbury Hill, situated in the county of Wiltshire, England, near Avebury, has long been associated with the extraordinary. Over time, it has garnered attention from enthusiasts and those captivated by the possibility of advanced life and supernatural phenomena. This notable hill, towering at an impressive height of 131 feet, was built by human hands, yet its purpose remains shrouded in mystery. Nevertheless, this enigma has not deterred people from speculating about its true nature, with some even positing that it possesses a mystical essence or conceals a hidden treasure within its ancient structure. The allure and intrigue surrounding Silbury Hill have grown exponentially, making it a fascinating subject for those who seek to delve into the realms of the unknown and expand their knowledge of the unexplained. In the summer of 2009, a police officer, who happened to be off duty at the time, was driving along the A4 road, which offers a decent view of the enigmatic Silbury Hill. It was early morning, just before dawn, when the officer's attention was drawn to what is commonly known as a crop circle. What caught the officer's curiosity was the fresh appearance of this particular crop circle, as if it had been recently formed. However, that was not the only unusual aspect of the scene. As the officer observed the mysterious crop circle, he noticed 3 exceptionally tall figures standing nearby. Cloaked in white garments, their faces hidden from view, and adorned with long blonde hair, these figures piqued the officer's interest. At first, he dismissed them as investigators conducting a forensic examination. But as he approached, a distinct and bothersome buzzing sound reached his ears, impossible to ignore. Surprisingly, the figures seemed completely unfazed by this auditory disturbance. Undeterred, the officer ventured closer and even tried to communicate with the figures, calling out to them. However, his attempts went unnoticed. It was during this interaction, though, that the officer sensed something peculiar occurring within the boundaries of the crop circle. The strange buzzing emanated from within, and the crops within the circle swayed as if being moved by an invisible force, despite the absence of any noticeable wind in the surrounding atmosphere. This stark contrast, where everything outside the crop circle remained still, strongly suggested that something other than wind was responsible for the movement, perhaps an unidentified engine. Driven by curiosity, the officer mustered the courage to approach the figures, causing them to briefly turn their heads in his direction before vanishing into thin air with an uncanny, supernatural swiftness that made it impossible for him to keep up. The perplexing buzzing sound, however, persisted. Faced with this unnerving situation, the officer decided it was best to retreat to the safety of his vehicle, succumbing to a sudden wave of apprehension. The summer morning encounter along the A4 road left the officer astounded by the fresh crop circle, the enigmatic figures with their concealed faces, and the inexplicable buzzing sound resonating from within. It was an encounter marked by a sense of mystery and an eerie astonishment that lingered in the officer's mind, igniting a desire for answers to the puzzling phenomenon. In a scenario reminiscent of Shermer's case, the officer stationed at Silbury Hill underwent an agonizing headache that persisted throughout the entire day following his perplexing encounter. Filing a detailed report with his superiors, the officer's claims were not thoroughly investigated due to the fact that he was off duty during the incident. Despite the absence of any additional eyewitnesses, or at least no individuals who came forward, peculiarly enough, there were other intriguing accounts from individuals who had observed an anomalous, unmarked helicopter hovering precisely at the same location where the officer first spotted the crop circle. This peculiar helicopter remained stationary for an uninterrupted 3-hour period before abruptly departing towards an unknown destination on the night following the officer's inexplicable experience. Although this correspondence is not an exact witness account, one can't help but question the likelihood of a mysterious and unmarked helicopter coincidentally appearing in the same vicinity. Is it merely an extraordinary coincidence, or a subtle confirmation of the officer's exceptional encounter? This intriguing series of events raises intriguing questions and adds an unprecedented layer of complexity to the story. The mysterious disappearances of Terence Williams and Felipe Santos. The disappearances of Terence Williams and Felipe Santos are two cases that have baffled investigators and haunted their families for over a decade. These men, both young and full of promise, vanished under suspicious circumstances in Naples, Florida, in separate incidents involving the same former police officer, Steve Culkins. Terence Williams, a 27-year-old father of 4, disappeared on January 12, 2004. According to witness accounts, Terence was last seen being stopped by Deputy Steve Culkins for driving without a license. Culkins claimed to have dropped Terence off at a nearby convenience store, but Terence was never seen again. The circumstances surrounding Terence's disappearance immediately raised questions. Friends and family described him as a responsible and caring father who would not willingly abandon his children. Culkins's account of the incident was inconsistent with witness statements, and his actions became a focal point of the investigation. Less than 3 months before Terence's disappearance, on October 14, 2003, Felipe Santos, a 23-year-old Mexican immigrant, vanished under eerily similar circumstances. Like Terence, Felipe was stopped by Deputy Steve Culkins for driving without a license. Culkins claimed to have arrested Felipe and arranged for him to be transported to the county jail. However, there is no record of Felipe's arrival at the jail, and he has never been located since. Felipe's family, distraught and desperate for answers, sought to uncover the truth about what happened to their son, and the similarities between the two cases raised suspicions that something sinister may have occurred at the hands of Deputy Culkins. The investigations into the disappearances of Terence Williams and Felipe Santos faced numerous challenges. Initially, there was limited evidence to corroborate the accounts provided by Deputy Culkins, and the absence of physical evidence made it difficult to establish foul play definitively. Moreover, the investigations were complicated by the reluctance of some law enforcement agencies to fully cooperate and disclose information. Some officials downplayed the significance of the cases, contributing to the frustration and disillusionment of the victims' families. The families of Terrence Williams and Felipe Santos have been instrumental in keeping their cases in the public eye, and through activism and advocacy efforts, they have fought to ensure that their loved ones are not forgotten and that justice is served. The support of community organizations and civil rights advocates has played a crucial role in bringing attention to these cases. Public pressure, fueled by widespread awareness campaigns and protests, has prompted renewed interest from law enforcement agencies. Despite the passage of time, the families of Terrence Williams and Felipe Santos continue to search for answers. They remain determined to uncover the truth about what happened to their loved ones and to hold those responsible accountable for their actions. Recent developments, including the reopening of investigations and the issuance of subpoenas, suggest that progress is being made in these long-standing cases. The efforts of the victims' families and the tireless work of dedicated investigators have given hope that justice may finally be served. The Calvine Incident. The Calvine UFO photo, also known as the picture taken near the town of Calvine in Scotland, has captivated and divided the UFO community for a significant period of time, making it one of the most fascinating and controversial pieces of evidence in the realm of potential extraterrestrial activity. Recently, there has been a revelation regarding the identity of the mysterious person behind the camera, reigniting the attention and curiosity surrounding this enigmatic image. This comprehensive exploration delves deep into the various aspects and implications of the Calvine photo, enriching our understanding of its significance and contributing to the ongoing discourse within the UFO community. According to the majority of references, it is widely accepted that the photograph was captured during the afternoon of August 4, 1990, specifically when two unidentified individuals were observed strolling in the direction of the town of Calvine. As the observers directed their gaze upwards while engaged in their previous activity, they were unexpectedly captivated by the presence of a conspicuous object resembling the shape of a diamond hovering above them. Upon making a cursory assessment, they approximated the dimensions of this peculiar vessel to be approximately 100 feet in diameter. Upon realizing that they had captured an exceptionally extraordinary event in the photographs, the individuals involved decided to approach a newspaper with the hope that their intriguing sighting would be published. However, to their surprise, the newspaper declined to run any story regarding their encounter. As a peculiar turn of events, the photographs ultimately ended up in the possession of the Ministry of Defense, raising even more questions about the significance of what had been captured. After the occurrence, the incident appeared to fade into obscurity, only regaining attention with the publication of a book by Nick Pope, a prominent UFO researcher from the United Kingdom. In this book, Pope recounts the incident and sheds new light on its significance. He reveals that the photographs taken during the incident were carefully examined by multiple individuals within the Ministry of Defense. It is claimed that these images served as compelling evidence and played a pivotal role in gradually shifting Pope's skepticism towards UFO sightings. The encounter prompted him to realize that there existed a deeper and more intriguing aspect to these phenomena than he had initially believed. In an unexpected turn of events, the situation took an even more peculiar twist. Suddenly, and without warning, an RAF Tornado aircraft materialized out of nowhere, encircling the enigmatic object in question. Sensing the significance of this moment, one of the individuals swiftly reached for a camera they fortuitously carried and successfully captured a series of photographs, freezing the bizarre encounter in time. Astonishingly, in the blink of an eye, the mysterious entity swiftly ascended vertically, vanishing from sight with unfathomable velocity. This perplexing event left the observers in awe, bewildered by the inexplicable sequence of events that had just unfolded before their eyes. Even though the existence of the photograph had been known to the public since the mid-1990s through Pope's book, it wasn't until the early 2020s when Dr. David Clarke conducted extensive research on the case that it regained widespread attention. Interestingly, Clarke had actually interviewed Pope about the incident as early as 2001. Clarke's thorough examination of the subject shed new light on the photograph, bringing it back to the forefront of public interest. This significant resurgence sparked renewed discussions and analysis, leading to a deeper understanding of the photograph and its implications. During their conversation, Pope would disclose to Clark that he had initially come across the photograph in a poster form during his tenure at the Ministry of Defense. According to Pope, it is worth mentioning that the picture in question had received significant attention and scrutiny from multiple individuals. It was widely perceived as a representation of a sturdy and well-constructed spacecraft, rather than being dismissed as a mere fabrication or trickery. To put it succinctly, within the Ministry of Defense, there existed a considerable belief, as voiced by Pope, that the picture indeed depicted a genuine phenomenon. This perspective was shared by many individuals within the ministry, suggesting a collective confidence in the authenticity of the image. The Pope then proceeded to disclose that in the aftermath, numerous individuals began to question the true nature of the object, raising suspicions that it might be an undisclosed, top-secret aircraft developed by the United States government under the classified project codenamed Aurora. It was during this period that Pope vividly remembered encountering a defensive mindset among those involved in handling these claims. In a fascinating turn of events, one of his superiors entered his office one day, swiftly removing the poster depicting the mysterious object from the wall and securely locking it away in a drawer, an action that left an indelible impression on Pope. Remarkably, as far as he was aware at the time of speaking in 2001, the poster's hidden residence within that very drawer likely persisted to this day, adding an intriguing layer of longevity to the enigma surrounding it. It is worth noting that in addition to his discussions with Clark, Pope revealed that he had made multiple attempts to inquire about the existence of a clandestine aircraft from American sources. Interestingly, the responses he received indicated that they did not possess such a secretive aircraft. However, they curiously directed their curiosity towards the British military, questioning if they might have a similar aircraft to the one described by Pope. This exchange suggests that the Americans were also aware of reports relating to the existence of such an aircraft. The information provided by Pope sheds light on the international interest and intrigue surrounding this elusive aircraft. In January 2023, Matthew Ilsley, a member of Clark's research team, shared in an interview with the Falkirk Herald that he had successfully located the photograph they had been searching for. To their surprise, there was a name written on the back of the photograph. This significant discovery was made possible through the assistance of Craig Lindsay, a retired RAF officer, who had secretly held onto the photograph in his residence and later passed it on to Ilsley for further examination. The revelation of the name on the back of the photograph added a new layer of intrigue and possibilities to their investigation. In his article published in the Daily Mail, Clark claimed that upon seeing the photograph presented by Lindsay, he immediately recognized it as something extraordinary. He described the image as slightly blurry, giving the impression that it was captured in a moment of panic. However, Clark noted that this was in line with the witnesses' accounts. Emphasizing that he is not easily swayed by unsubstantiated theories, Clark confidently maintained that the depicted object is undoubtedly a structured craft of unknown origin. He stressed that its appearance is undeniably otherworldly, and unlike any conventional aircraft commonly known. By stating this, he aimed to establish the uniqueness and remarkable nature of the unidentified flying object captured in the photograph. Furthermore, it is worth noting that Clark can confirm the steps he took to ensure the authenticity of the photograph. To ascertain its validity, he sought the expertise of Andrew Robinson, a senior lecturer on photography at Sheffield Hallam University. The conclusions drawn by Robinson after analysing the photograph were conclusive. No tampering had taken place, thus affirming its genuineness. This raises an intriguing question. If the photograph were indeed a fake, what could explain the photographer's prolonged silence over a period of more than 3 decades? According to Clark, Robinson conveyed to him that the object was situated unmistakably in front of the camera and assured him that it was not a fabricated element created during post-production. This information provided by Robinson serves to confirm the authenticity of the object's presence in the footage. Lindsay affirms that he had the opportunity to meet the photographer more than 30 years ago, and from their initial interaction, it became evident to Lindsay that the young man was experiencing feelings of fear and unease due to the distressing event he had witnessed. Lindsay also observed that the photographer's demeanor and behavior indicated that he was not fabricating or inventing the incident in any way. In his conversation with Clark, he would express that as a press officer for the RAF in Scotland, he had encountered numerous reports of UFOs, although most of them proved to be mere sightings of peculiar lights. However, he would emphatically assert that the situation with the Calvine UFO photograph was distinct. Moreover, he would vividly recall that when the witness mentioned that the object was completely silent and emitted no noise whatsoever, he began to recognize the possibility that it could be something extraordinary. He would further elaborate that, based on his knowledge, there were no known aircraft that operated without producing any sound. This observation prompted him to consider the potential exceptional nature of the object in question. Lindsay took the initiative to share copies of the picture with various newspapers and also sent a faxed copy to the Ministry of Defense. From his memory, he recalled that the MOD promptly reached out to him, expressing their interest in obtaining more information about the sighting and inquiring if he still possessed the original negatives. When Pope visited the Ministry of Defense offices in London, he was surprised to discover that the photograph had been enlarged to a poster size and prominently displayed on the office wall. This detail highlights the significance and impact of the image within the ministry. In the end, Lindsay received instructions to refrain from pursuing any further investigation into the sighting and leave it in the hands of the authorities in London. Over the course of subsequent years, no further information or updates were received regarding the sighting. However, Lindsay held on to the original photograph, preserving it in a drawer at his residence. In conversations with Clark, Lindsay expressed his optimistic anticipation that the two individuals who had witnessed the event would eventually come forward and share their personal accounts. This hopeful expectation signifies Lindsay's desire for the truth to be revealed from first-hand experiences. In an effort to preserve the anonymity of the photographer, the person responsible for the photographs was intentionally kept unknown to the public. Ilsley, the spokesperson, explained that they had diligently undertaken the task of reaching out to as many individuals as possible who might possess information about the identity of the photographer in question. In March 2023, there was a disclosure that the photographer's identity had been uncovered and confirmed as Kevin Russell. It seems that Russell had been employed as a porter at the Pitlochry Hydro Hotel, located nearby, for a considerable number of years. However, according to reports, he supposedly left Pitlochry and returned to Glasgow during the early 1990s. This information sheds light on Russell's previous occupation and his possible movements during that period. Ilsley conducted extensive and thorough searches in an ardent effort to locate Russell. In this pursuit, she delved into various records and databases, unearthing information on approximately 300 individuals, sharing the name Russell, who would now be in their 50s, solely within the borders of Scotland. The research further revealed an additional 150 individuals with the same name dispersed across other regions within the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, and Australia. Despite meticulously reaching out to each of these individuals, Ilsley's endeavours proved fruitless, as none of them turned out to be the person she and her team were fervently seeking. Subsequently, the legal proceedings advanced further, when an unidentified individual, purporting to have been employed at the hotel during the same period as Russell, provided Ilsley with a photograph depicting the elusive person they were diligently seeking. This development added another layer of complexity and intrigue to the case, as the anonymous source's revelation opened up new possibilities for the investigation. The item under consideration could potentially be a cutting-edge, confidential military apparatus. Nevertheless, even if this supposition were accurate, it would inevitably raise additional inquiries regarding the specific types of vehicles that the armed forces of various nations, such as the United States, the United Kingdom, and potentially others globally, possess within their arsenals. Exploring this matter in depth, it is essential to delve into the comprehensive range of military vehicles at the disposal of these nations, uncovering a wealth of information that may enrich our understanding of their capabilities and strategic resources. Numerous researchers and aviation specialists have engaged in extensive speculation regarding the nature of the object captured in the Calvine UFO photograph. Specifically, they have questioned whether it could potentially be an aircraft associated with the highly secretive Aurora program, This enigmatic program, rumored to have been operational since the early 1990s, allegedly involved a top-secret hypersonic aircraft conducting clandestine operations from United States air bases situated in Scotland. The speculation surrounding this photograph has prompted scholarly and expert discussions, delving into the precise connections between the photographed object and the Aurora program, thus adding another layer of intrigue to the ongoing mystery surrounding this intriguing phenomenon. It is indeed intriguing to note that despite the wealth of information available regarding the Calvine UFO photograph, there exists a significant number of individuals within the UFO community who refute its authenticity. Some argue that it is simply a reconnaissance aircraft belonging to the US military, while others strongly assert that it is nothing more than an elaborate hoax. It is frequently suggested that skeptics will only entertain the notion of extraterrestrial visitors when confronted with photographic evidence. However, even when such evidence does manifest, as is the case with the Calvine UFO picture, it is promptly dismissed as insufficient proof of anything extraordinary. This prevailing skepticism within the UFO community is a noteworthy aspect to consider. Despite the numerous debates surrounding the authenticity of the Calvine UFO photograph, opinions remain divided. There are those who adamantly reject its legitimacy, attributing it to covert military operations. Conversely, skeptics dismiss it entirely as a fabrication, emphasizing the need for incontestable proof in order to be persuaded of the plausibility of advanced visitations. It is important to recognize the significance of differing perspectives within this discourse. Just what was the strange object witnessed over the town of Calvine that evening in the summer of 1990? And if there was nothing to the object, why does the military wish certain files connected to the case to remain classified until well into the 2070s, despite the 30-year rule on such information? Although the National Archives insist that only the names of those involved are subject to this rule, it is certainly an area for suspicion. We would, for example, suspect if the object was simply an experimental aircraft, details of it would be safe to enter the public arena 30 years later. The twists and turns that the Calvine UFO photograph and the events surrounding it have taken only go to show how murky the world of UFO research actually is. At the time of writing, the search is on, both for Russell and the other witness to the events, and if they do decide to come forward, the Calvine UFO photograph could indeed prove to be one of the most important pieces of evidence for UFO researchers in history. That it is as relevant today as it was when it was first taken over 30 years ago is without doubt. The disappearance of Jordan Nebling. Jordan Nebling, a 19-year-old individual, went missing in Travelers Rest, South Carolina on the 10th of October in the year 2020. Her disappearance occurred following an incident where her car unexpectedly broke down near the vicinity of Old White Horse Road, as a result of which she required assistance. It was her ex-boyfriend who came to her aid and picked her up. Jordan Cheyenne Nebling, born on March 8, 2001, entered this world as a precious gift to her mother, Heidi Nebling. However, circumstances led her to grow up in the nurturing embrace of foster care. Yet, destiny had a different plan for Jordan, as she was later fortunate enough to find her forever home through adoption. Jordan, during her teenage years, had a troubling past. The circumstances surrounding her vanishing were unrelated to her previous struggles. Notably, Jordan had successfully embarked on a positive journey towards adulthood. She had recently secured a new job, which signified a positive change for her. She had a reputation for regularly visiting the scenic locations of Travelers Rest and Marietta in South Carolina. On October 9, 2020, Jordan Nebling and a male companion embarked on a journey from Travelers Rest to visit their acquaintances in the charming town of Cowpens, situated in South Carolina. It should be noted that Jordan and her friend were traveling in a car that was kindly loaned to them. On the date of October 10, 2020, Jordan made the decision to embark on a solo journey back to her hometown of Travelers Rest. However, unforeseen circumstances arose when the vehicle she had borrowed unexpectedly experienced a breakdown right in front of a residential property situated on Old White Horse Road in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. In the afternoon, at approximately 1:30, Jordan Nebling was sighted for the last time near her residence. It was during this time that she was observed entering a vehicle belonging to an individual who had arrived to collect her. Regrettably, Jordan never made her way back home, and there has been a prolonged absence of any communication. On November 8, 2020, the stepmother of the individual took the proactive step of filing a report to the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, expressing concern and seeking assistance in locating the missing person. This action came about due to the stepmother's unsuccessful attempts to establish contact with Jordan. According to the authorities' findings, it was established that Jordan had made contact with her former romantic partner, Tyler Wilkins, who resided in the town of Travelers Rest, with the intention of seeking a ride from him. Tyler attested that he indeed drove Jordan to his residence. However, an altercation arose between them, resulting in Jordan opting to depart on foot independently. Jordan and Wylans were in a romantic relationship for a period of 2 years, and even had a brief period of cohabitation when Jordan was just 17. It is worth mentioning that at the time, Tyler Wilkins, despite being associated with Jordan's disappearance, has not faced any charges related to any criminal activities. However, in a turn of events, Tyler Wilkins, who was previously in a relationship with Jordan, found himself arrested on November 10, 2022. This arrest came about due to his involvement in a series of crimes, including taking someone's life. Wilkins stands accused of allegedly imprisoning his partner within the confines of a residence belonging to a family member. Authorities have raised suspicions of foul play in the case of Jordan Nebling's disappearance, however. Despite a thorough investigation, no conclusive evidence of a crime has been uncovered. The exact details surrounding Jordan's disappearance continue to be shrouded in mystery, leaving her case classified as a missing person. Despite extensive investigations, her whereabouts remain unknown and the case remains unsolved. The disappearance of Alexis Ware. Alexis Ware, a 29-year-old woman, went missing in Anderson, South Carolina on January 30, 2022. Her disappearance occurred following a meeting with her former partner at a gas station. The circumstances surrounding her vanishing remain a matter of concern, leaving her friends and family worried. Alexis Ware, who resided in Greenville, South Carolina, went missing along with her 2 children. Her household consisted of a 9-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. This disappearance case has garnered significant attention due to the circumstances surrounding her absence. Alexis, a skilled hairstylist, operated her own home studio where she catered to a loyal clientele. With a strong presence on social media, she aspired to venture into the realm of Instagram modeling, utilizing her creativity and expertise to showcase various hairstyles and fashion trends. Beyond her immediate goals, Alexis harbored long-term ambitions of establishing an exclusive boutique in the vibrant city of Atlanta, envisioning it as a stepping stone towards a better future for her family. Over the course of a leisurely weekend from January 29th to January 31st, 2022, Alexis Ware decided to take a break from her usual routine in Greenville, South Carolina. Eager to spend quality time with her loved ones, she embarked on a journey to her mother's residence. She expressed her feelings of anxiety and unease to her mother, recounting her experiences of being followed and receiving unwelcome calls from an unidentified individual whom she had nicknamed the Devil. These unnerving encounters had left her with a deep sense of fear, causing her to doubt whether she would even reach the milestone of her impending 30th birthday. In the early afternoon of January 30th, 2022, Sarah Ware bid farewell to her mother and embarked on her journey back to her hometown of Greenville. 3 hours later, at precisely 3 in the afternoon, she engaged in a heartfelt conversation with her mother through the convenience of a video chat, during which she casually mentioned her intention to catch up on some much-needed rest. In the evening, at approximately 7, Ware made her way to the 7-Eleven store located on Highway 29 North in Anderson, South Carolina. Her intention was to meet TJ Patterson, the father of her youngest child. Upon arrival, she entrusted the care of their children to him, after which they departed the premises in their respective vehicles. Ware was originally intended to accompany Patterson to his mother's residence before returning to her own mother's abode. However, as per reports, at some juncture, she purportedly maneuvered her vehicle ahead of his at a red traffic signal and swiftly accelerated into the darkness of the night. In the evening, precisely at 7:30, Patterson took the initiative to reach out to Ware's mother and provided a detailed account of the events leading to their separation. Patterson expressed her concern by attempting to call her daughter's cell phone. However, her attempts were unsuccessful as the call directly diverted to her voicemail. Alexis Ware, a young woman with a promising future, mysteriously disappeared without a trace and did not make it back to her home. On the first day of February in the year 2022, the family of the individual in question took the step of submitting a report to the Anderson County Sheriff's Office, as they were unable to establish contact with her. In the evening of January 30th, 2022, there was a significant event related to Ware's cell phone. At precisely 8:15 in the evening, her cell phone sent a signal that indicated its location as Anderson, South Carolina. This important piece of information provided a starting point for further investigation. Furthermore, there were additional sightings of her car captured by surveillance cameras at an apartment complex in Anderson on multiple occasions throughout that night. In the late hours of that very evening, the surveillance cameras along the highway in Augusta, Georgia, approximately 1 hour's drive away, captured the presence of Ware's car. However, it remains uncertain as to whether Alexis Ware herself was behind the wheel of the vehicle during that particular moment in time. This raises questions about the identity of the individual who may have been operating the vehicle. On the 1st of February, 2022, the vehicle belonging to Ware, which was a red Honda Accord manufactured in the year 2019 and bearing a South Carolina license plate, was discovered abandoned and heavily coated in mud. This peculiar finding took place in a hunting field located in McCormick, South Carolina, approximately 30 miles to the south of Anderson. Ware lacked any companions or relatives in the vicinity of McCormick. Interestingly, her cell phone, purse, and identification documents were discovered within the vehicle itself, indicating their undeniable presence. Furthermore, an assortment of garments was recovered from the trunk, suggesting possible intention for a change of attire. On a peculiar note, her hair bonnet was stumbled upon lying on the ground adjacent to the automobile. This collection of intriguing details raises profound questions and warrants further investigation into the circumstances surrounding Ware's situation in the McCormick area. In their investigative efforts, the police successfully obtained fingerprints from the vehicle in question. However, they have refrained from disclosing any information regarding the potential match between these prints and the individual suspected to be Ware or any other person involved in the case. T.J. Patterson, in his statement to the authorities, recounted that on January 30th, he departed for home after meeting with Alexis at the gas station. The following day, he proceeded to work as usual. As part of the investigation, surveillance footage from the gas station's parking lot was carefully examined, revealing no unusual activities or circumstances. This thorough analysis aimed to gain a comprehensive understanding of the events surrounding T.J. Patterson's activities during this time period and provide additional insights into the case. Currently, there have been no individuals identified as persons of interest in the case of Alexis's disappearance. However, the police have made it clear that they are actively investigating all potential leads and considering every possibility. In the investigation into Alexis Ware's disappearance, the police have thoroughly examined the case and have not come across any evidence, means, or motives indicating foul play. The details surrounding the disappearance of Alexis Ware are shrouded in mystery, leaving investigators with little information to work with. At present, her whereabouts remain unknown, and the case remains unsolved.